What if there was a blueprint written 100 years ago for how any nation could achieve greatness? Sounds kind of wild, right? Well, today we're diving into this exact idea from a book called The Land of White Lilies by Grigory Petrov. It's less a history lesson and more a timeless recipe for how a country can completely rebuild itself from the ground up. Let's see how they did it.
So, our story kicks off in a pretty unexpected place, not in some stuffy parliament building, but in the magnificent Moscow State Theater. In the late 1800s, something really alarming started to happen. Massive cracks, and I mean massive, started appearing, snaking their way from the foundation all the way to the roof. The entire beautiful building was threatening to just fall apart. So, they send in the engineers, and what they find is just shocking. Get this, the whole massive stone building was sitting on wooden stilts driven into swampy ground. And surprise, surprise, the wood was rotting away. But instead of just tearing it down, they did something absolutely incredible. They painstakingly dug out every single piece of that rotting wood and replaced it piece by piece with solid granite, giving the theater a brand new, unshakable foundation.
And that right there, that theater, that's the big metaphor at the heart of this whole book. The argument is that nations are exactly the same. They're often built on old, outdated ideas and systems that eventually start to rot from within. And when those cracks start to show, you can't just slap some paint on them. You have to go deep. You have to rebuild the entire foundation.
Okay, so that leads to a huge question, right? Who's actually responsible for this kind of massive foundational change? Does it all come down to a few brilliant leaders, or does that power really come from the people themselves?
Well, this gets us into a classic debate. It's a real tug-of-war of ideas. On one side, you've got thinkers like Thomas Carlyle. For him, society is basically just lifeless clay, and it's the heroes, your Caesars, your Napoleons, who come along and shape it. But then you have someone like Leo Tolstoy, who says, no way. He argued that great leaders are just the foam on top of the wave, pushed forward by the huge, unstoppable current of the people's collective will.
So what's the answer? The book comes in with this really elegant idea that brings both sides together. It says you need both. The hero might be the lightning strike, a brilliant flash of energy. But that lightning can't exist without the cloud, the nation, the people full of potential that generated it in the first place.
Here's another way to picture it, and I love this analogy. A great leader is like a magnifying lens. Now, the lens itself doesn't create any light, right? It's powerless on its own. But what it can do is gather all those scattered, weak rays of sunlight, a nation's energy, its spirit, its intelligence, and focus them into one powerful, intense beam that can start fires and change the world. Without the sun, the lens is just a piece of glass.
All right, so with that whole idea of clouds and lenses in our head, the book pivots to a real-world case study. And it picks a place that honestly seemed like it had zero chance of success. We're talking about Finland.
And we really need to paint a picture of just how dire things were. I mean, the Finns' own name for their country, Suomi, literally translates to land of swamps. Think about that. We're talking a brutal climate, terrible land for farming, basically no natural resources, and they were constantly being ruled by their huge neighbors, Sweden and Russia. Their whole culture was described as this pale, weak flower trying to survive in a dark, airless cellar.
So who lit the spark? It wasn't some powerful politician. It was an intellectual, a guy named Johann Sinelmann. And he threw down this incredible challenge to the country's tiny handful of educated people. He basically told them, your education isn't for you. It's not about getting a comfortable life. You are the nation's brain. And it is your job, your duty, to wake this country up.
And the strategy they came up with was genius. It was built on two incredibly powerful pillars. First, transform the nation's core institutions. And second, at the very same time, transform the spirit of every single individual.
Okay, so pillar number one was just revolutionary. They took the one institution you'd associate with brute force and, well, breaking people down, the army, and they decided to turn it into what they called the People's University. The idea was that the barracks would no longer be a place of vice and brutality, but would become the nation's most important school for building character. And how they did it was just brilliant. Young, educated officers came in and completely changed the culture. They'd insisted on cleanliness, both physical and moral, no more profanity, and the daily lessons weren't just about marching. They taught science, history, civics, and practical skills. The whole point wasn't just to make good soldiers. It was to send every single one of them home as an educated ambassador, a leader ready to lift up their own village.
But you know, changing institutions is only half the story. That's the top-down part. How do you change the people themselves, from the ground up? The book answers this with an amazing story that starts with a simple question. The answer lies in the story of this guy, Yarvinen, a dirt-poor pretzel seller. One day, he goes to a public lecture about human potential and it just clicks. He decides he's going to become the Robinson Crusoe of jam. Sounds crazy, right? But his tiny little syrup factory blows up. It becomes a huge national industry that makes farming better and provides cheap, healthy food for everyone. He even exported his jams with this amazing motto, "Sweet is the enemy of bitter," believing good food could help fight the country's problems.
And get this, that one idea from that one lecture, it spread like wildfire. A friend of his, a shoemaker, hears the same message and becomes the shoe king, whose shoes ended up being worn by royalty across Europe. Another friend becomes the egg king, creating a massive export business built completely on quality and trust. It was a chain reaction of inspiration.
So just take a second and remember where we started. A land of swamps, a nation defined by this bleak, hopeless landscape, a people who felt they had no future.
And through decades of this hard, grassroots work, in army barracks, in tiny factories, in villages, they completely transformed that landscape. They turned the land of swamps into the land of white lilies.
And that right there is the heart of it all. This incredible national renewal wasn't some grand 5-year plan from the government. It was the cumulative effect of thousands and thousands of ordinary people, teachers, doctors, officers, and yes, pretzel sellers, who decided to build a better foundation, one person at a time, one community at a time.
So the book's final point, its big argument, is that a nation's true strength isn't about political power or how much money it has. Those things come and go. The real, solid, unshakable foundation is the character of its people, their education, their sense of dignity, and their shared will to build something better together.
And so this story from 100 years ago leaves us with a question that feels incredibly relevant right now. It kind of forces us to look in the mirror, doesn't it? To ask ourselves, what are our foundations built on today? Are we standing on solid granite? Or are we maybe standing on rotting wood, just hoping the cracks don't start to show?